Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Sunday service for January 19th of 2025. Today we're going to talk about the peace that passes understanding. Did you know that there were over 250 references to the peace of God in the Bible? Jesus himself referred to that type of peace over 35 times in his teachings. Paul, in his letter to the Philippians, chapter 4, verses 6 and 7, wrote, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition and thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your mind in Christ Jesus." And Charles Fillmore, in many of his books and teachings, referred to this type of peace as stating that peace was something that each of us has inside of us. That type of peace was the realization of the indwelling Christ. In his book, The 12 Powers of Man, Charles wrote that, "And when it comes, when you are attuned to the spiritual truth that brings peace." Peace is the power that comes when the mind and soul are attuned to the spiritual realm. It comes to us when we are consciously living in harmony with the law of love. And Charles also wrote that this deep inner peace that goes beyond our conscious way of understanding is not a state that we can produce, but it's a state that we can align ourselves with, as he states, through prayer and meditation and faith. He wrote that peace is the divine quality of the soul, and it can only be experienced by living in constant attunement with the divine. Now, this is a peace that everyone can reach, but it's not the absence of external conflicts. It's a deeper spiritual peace that provides a sense of stability, hope, comfort, regardless of what's going on around us. But this type of peace requires work, deep inner work, intentional efforts, spiritual practices that go beyond our ordinary everyday way of living. And today, this is what I want to touch upon. Just how do we achieve this peace that passes all understanding? And of course, the first and foremost way is that we have to have some type of spiritual practice in our lives. Each one of us is on a conscious spiritual journey. So, by saying that the need for prayer and meditation is first and foremost the one practice that we must have, it's actually like talking to the choir. But the fact is, the one most important thing we must do is to have a constant and consistent prayer and meditation time each and every day. Now, prayer is the time we spend communicating with God, Source, asking for guidance, comfort, wisdom, doesn't matter. This is a time we need to begin to surrender what is going on in our lives, trusting that there actually is a higher power that's guiding us. Meditation, which is taught in every religion around the world, is a practice that allows us to calm our minds, focus the thoughts, and connect with our inner spiritual self. The practice of mindfulness meditation, for example, helps us to become more deeply aware of our thoughts and emotions without becoming overwhelmed by them, which in turn allows that peace to occur. Now that trust there is actually a higher power guiding us is a key aspect of the peace that passes understanding. And that statement, of course, was from Charles Fillmore. But that is the only way that we can truly surrender control over life's uncertainties and challenges. And of course, it's called for faith at its highest. Faith is one of the 12 powers that Charles Fillmore talked about. And Edgar Cayce, in his book, The Search for God, has this as the start of his first affirmation. "Not my will, but thine, O Lord, be done in and through me," which indicates a total surrender to the divine will of God. But this surrender is one that takes practice, it takes commitment, and it takes discipline to continuously, moment by moment, move to that place of releasing it all to divine. However, by doing so, we can more and more easily free ourselves from the fear and anxiety that surrounds this earth. Now, Eckhart Tolle has written many books about being in the present moment, and this is another step to take in reaching this peace that passes understanding. Being in this present moment without reliving the past or being concerned about the future brings us inward so we can connect with the divine within us. There's a statement that goes something like, energy goes where thoughts flow. We are energetic beings. If our thoughts are on everything around us, then we are sending our thoughts out there. However, if we are present in this very moment in time and what is happening right now, then our energy is actually being held inside of us. And with it inside of us and not being sent out in worry, fear, etc., that energy actually is now more fully connecting us with Source itself. And it is that connection that brings us peace. But as anyone who has tried to be in the present moment, it's not easy. We are so accustomed to allowing our thoughts to wander here and there, and they don't want to stay in this present moment. You know, while I've been talking so far, how many of your thoughts have traveled to what you're going to do for dinner tonight or something you have to do tomorrow or whatever? You know, this is just normal and natural behavior for our thoughts. So training them to stay in this present moment is actually like herding cats sometimes. You know, these thoughts do not want to stay where you want them to. And this is part of what I meant earlier when I said that this type of peace requires work, deep inner work and intentional efforts. To keep calling our thoughts back to this present moment requires commitment on our part that we want to actually be in this present moment. The beautiful part is the more we practice this, the easier it becomes until we find we are not thinking about tomorrow or last week or whatever. And by practicing being in the moment, we realize that we can replace one set of thoughts with other ones. And this practice of changing fear or worry or anger to whatever thoughts we're having into a more present and positive thoughts that we actually have control over. Ones that affirm our connection with the divine. And that is critical in obtaining the peace that passes understanding. Through the process of consciously changing thought patterns, we are creating a deeper sense of relaxation and calmness within our physical bodies that then leads to a greater sense of peace within. Another aspect of reaching this type of peace is the power of acceptance, accepting ourselves as we are and where we are. Everyone is at a different place in their spiritual growth. And believe me, some days we feel totally connected, and other days we just don't feel that connection. And when that happens, there's a tendency to judge ourselves that we've been doing something wrong. And I am here to tell you, nope, sometimes it just is what it is. Life around us happens, events happen that can throw us off. We don't get enough sleep. Someone gets upset with us. An extra bill comes in. There's 1,001 different things that can occur that can throw us off. And yes, we are doing our very best every given moment. And every given moment, we're trying to do what I've been speaking about. And then something happens and we get off kilter again. Just accept that you get off kilter. Accept that you're having an off day. And this is when you get to practice being in the moment with love for yourself. And this is where the work comes in. Accepting what is, loving it, and moving on. This is where the practice of choosing thoughts come in. Okay, I'm having a challenging day. What do I want to think about right this moment? Do I want to go down the rabbit hole of getting myself upset that I'm having a bad day? Or do I want to choose thoughts of guidance and gratitude and thanksgiving for all the days that I have had that seem to go my way? And once again, this takes work and practice, but it does become easier each time you do it, which brings us to self-compassion. When we have compassion for others, especially when we seem to be struggling physically or emotionally, that self-compassion can help to release us of feelings of guilt or shame or inadequacy. Self-compassion can also lead to forgiveness, both for ourselves and others, for past grievances or hurts that were put upon us. Holding on to grudges or self-condemnation creates an inner emotional turmoil, while forgiveness frees us from that and allow the peace space within for that peace that passes understanding. When something really horrific happens to us, it may be hard to forgive, but when you want peace more than you want to hate, there is a forgiveness that passes understanding also. And when that forgiveness happens, that deeper peace begins to come to you. Now so far I've been speaking about the meditative thought changing ways to obtain this deeper peace. But sometimes there are just some practical living on this earth ways of being that we also need to look at that help us physiologically to have a more relaxed body, which helps to have a relaxed mind. Are you getting enough sleep? Is your body getting enough rest? Are you getting the exercise that your body needs to stay active and healthy? Are you eating the foods that help support a healthy body? Or are you just fixing foods that are quick and easy? Do you have activities outside of your home that keep your mind and body active? Do you have interests in life other than watching television? Do you have a community of friends around you that you can talk to that don't judge you and that can help keep you uplifted? These are all things that are critically important to having that peace that passes understanding. If we stay isolated, not physical active, not involved with others, not having supportive friends around, it's much harder to stay in that more uplifted state that allows a deeper peace to become part of our lives. One of the things about staying physically active is that regular physical activity has been shown to reduce stress, improve our mood, and improves overall health. Exercise releases endorphins, which are great for natural mood boosters, and that helps us to feel more peaceful and less anxious. If we don't get enough sleep, it can lead to physical tension in our bodies, which can make us more irritable and anxious, which of course stresses our bodies out. And we all know that proper nutrition is essential for having a good, healthy body, which in and of itself relaxes us. We all know that when we don't feel well, we are not at peace. And it seems somewhat impossible to relax and find that peace. So just looking at the physiological aspects of how to keep ourselves at peace assists in finding this peace that passes understanding. And now I want to discuss something that you may or not feel fits into this. After all, having the peace that passes all understanding is more of a spiritual thing, right? But sometimes to have that peace, we have to have something that is called setting boundaries for ourselves and others. We all want to be of service in some way. We want to help our friends out. We want to be the type of person that people can call upon. But sometimes that service can come as a detriment to our physical and emotional, bodies. If we're saying yes all the time, maybe it's time to say no once in a while. While we are out there doing, most of the time we're not taking the time to commune with Source. We're not taking the time to relax and enjoy life. Most importantly, we're not taking the time to be fully in the moment, present with just what is. And it's in these moments that we can be fully conscious of our oneness with the source of all that is. Yes, we can get to the point where no matter where we are, who we are with, what we're doing, we are also fully in contact with source. And each of us has had moments where we were doing something and we were also in the awareness of our being present with God. The two were one. And in those moments, it didn't matter what we were doing or who we were with. We were totally present in this world and the world of spirit. However, for the majority of times when we feel we have to be out here or there, or we have to help this or that person because they asked, we are not in that place of connection and that place of peace, especially when we begin to feel pressured or stressed or just plain physically tired. And this is when we need to learn to say no. This is when we need to learn to take that time for ourselves and keep ourselves in alignment. After all, when you fly, what does the steward or stewardess on the plane tell you? Put the mask on yourself first in order to help anyone else. And that is when taking care of yourself first becomes priority so that you can help others. And when you begin to do that, then your whole being can relax and you can make that connection with source, and that peace we have been speaking of can take over. We know that external circumstances do not determine our sense of peace. We know that our inner peace is not dependent on the world's conditions, but that it is our inner response to them. However, when the outside world is pressuring us in some way, when events in our lives are pulling us in all different directions, then this is where that inner work really takes place. And sometimes that inner work is developing that inner strength to step away from the outer to take the time for us to reach the inner. So now we've come full circles. And sometimes we begin with the step of setting boundaries for ourselves. We begin to exercise and take better care of our bodies by eating better, getting the rest we need. We start to focus on supportive friends, the ones we know who will help us on our path. Then we begin to commit to spending time in prayer and meditation. Then we find ourselves more present in the present moment. We begin to stop rehashing the past or worrying about the future. Then we begin to ask God, what would be the best for me to do today? What do you, God, want me to do? And eventually we realize we aren't even thinking about all the stories in our lives that we begin to, that we once were sharing so often. We find that we are beginning to be more and more often in the state of gratitude just for the day itself, no matter what it holds. And then we find ourselves becoming less and less judgmental of ourselves or others. And we find we're just accepting more of life as it is, as it presents itself. And we find ourselves having more and more compassion toward everything. We find ourselves just wanting to bless and send love to everyone and everything out there. And then one day we realize that nothing out there is touching us anymore, that we are not being affected by the world outside of us, that there is inside of us a deep and abiding peace that transcends anything that we have left before. This is when we realize that we have found the peace that passes all understanding, that the past is gone, the present is the only thing here, the future doesn't exist anymore. So just continue on your journey. Open yourselves up more and more to the blessings of God, being grateful and thankful for every single thing that happens to you. And one day you will find the peace that passes all understanding. God bless to everyone. Take care.